Thank you all for being here at Butch Voices. It's been 4 years since we've been here. A lot's happened in that 4 years. Good, bad, indifferent, some downright nasty, all the things. But we're very glad that you all are here with us, because I know that for me, and I've heard that from just the folks that I've connected with in the last 24 hours, which has been a really fast and fun 24 hours, that folks need this space. Folks need this community, and we're showing up for each other. And that's beautiful. So I'm Joe LeBlanc, the founder and the board chair for Butch Voices.
My name is Red Wolf Painter. I have kind of done just about everything there is to do for Butch Voices.
And so while we're here for our keynote today, we're going to go over just a couple of the housekeeping things about all the great things that are happening, because like any good classroom, we have your textbook that has lots of great information as well as great artwork.
Shout out to Tootie.
I don't see Audrey. Our artist friend, Audrey, is not here in the room, but she's definitely here at the conference this weekend, who did the amazing artwork, because we did a shout-out, call-out for folks to submit artwork to go with our theme, Reconnect, Recharge, Resist. So that's on our programs. It's also on the T-shirts, which are available for sale in the back with Jack and Mac. Wave, Jack and Mac. That's right. So the T-shirts are on sale for $20, and we've got our past T-shirts on sale for $5 from 2011 and 2013. So get all the Butch swag that's back there, as well as some great raffle prizes. We've got raffle tickets available back there, too, which we've got our Vanna standing up proudly. And we have a wonderful Puerto Vallarta 3-night stay for a silent auction that's also taking place back there. We've got lots of details, lots of things, but we also want to tell you about all the cool stuff that's happening tonight and this weekend. But first, there's more. We also have vendors downstairs, such as Hot Butch, Stack Deck Press, Riverstone Chiropractor, Cass Sellers Author, D. Hicks Massage. Yep, there's a massage chair down there.
That's right.
Good Vibrations, as well as tomorrow we will have Laurel Bookstore selling some of Gabby Rivera's books. Shout out to Gabby Rivera, who's here with us in the audience too. Hey! I'm going to let Wolf read off some of these things too.
Yep. Damn it.
You can do it.
I was hoping to get away with saying very little.
Nah.
Darn. All right. So tonight, if you haven't already registered for the singles dinner, you're a little out of luck. It's all full up, but it's happening at La Chevelle at 5:30. We're also having a book reading.
Which, if you turn to your inside cover, you will see a lovely image and visual.
Toby Hillmeyer, right back there, is going to be doing a reading. That'll be at the Fillmore at 7 p.m.
And then tonight, here later in the basement of all places, we have a sadistic rope workshop that's being done by the Exiles. I think we've got some few of the Exiles members here. If you want to wave, say hi, all the things. Yeah. That starts around 7:30 to 9. And then after that, we've got this...
Super Cutie Pie Party.
Yeah. We've got board member Carolyn Weisinger up here, too.
Special appearance.
Special appearance?
Yes.
Yeah.
To talk about the Super Cutie Pie Party. So we're having a super cute Cutie Pie Party. It's for everyone, but we call it a Cutie Pie Party, QTPOC, because it is very centered on our QTPOC family members, but all are welcome. There will be performances by super slam poet Mona Webb, performance by Aima the Dreamer, There will be food served by Chef Charlene, who, if you don't know, is Oakland's own and Food Network Chopped winner. So she'll be serving up food. Also, just to let you know, if at any point this weekend her restaurant is actually right, literally across the street. So if at any point, it's called Craft and Spoon.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, but she'll be serving food tonight at the party. She'll be serving food tonight at the party. There'll be sounds by DJ Ome, so it's going to be a great time. 9 to 2 at Red Bay Coffee House in the Fruitvale District.
How much is that?
It is $15. So you can still buy tickets online. Red Bay Coffee House in the Fruitvale District. Just jump in a Lyft, which is the best way to get there. Or an Uber if you don't like Lyft.
Don't use Uber.
What was that? So.
Oh, okay. I'm saying it again real fast. Cutie Pot Party at Red Bay Coffee House. No, which part? It's still not on?
Use your Butch voice.
Use my Butch voice?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Yes? You can hear me, but not the mic. Okay. Use my teacher voice, which I wasn't going to use till next week. Just do it now? Okay, so Cutie Pie Party at Red Bay Coffee House in the Fruitvale District is $15 to get in. Lots of performances, lots of food. We hope to see you there.
And obviously we like to give you lots of options because, like me, to come here for this weekend, I brought 17 ties, so I'm a butch who likes options. You won't see all 17, but you will see many. But we definitely want to give you a lot for what you're here for. I mean, there's the Bay has a lot to offer, and so we like to partner with the different organizations, the restaurants, the dance parties, because we don't need to recreate the wheel. We want to work with community here. So you don't have to take part of all those things, but you can definitely, drop in, have a good time, enjoy some of the things that are happening in Oakland. So after you do all of that or none of that tonight, we start back up at 9 a.m. That's right, 9 a.m. Yep, because you can do it, exactly. And then we've got Gabby's keynote at 10:45 right back here in this room. And then after a wonderful day of amazing workshops, connection, and all the great things, we've got this new item that we just added today to our plan. It's called the Butch Voices Solidarity Walking Tour. So you're going to leave from here at 5 p.m. from Oakstop and go around, there's probably 5 or 6 different businesses that's on this list. And you're going to visit the queer and POC-owned businesses that are local right here, right around Oakstop. We're in one right now. We're in one right now with Oakstop, and then our event tonight at Fieldmore. That's also another spot. Nope, just be here at 5 p.m. We've got Don Brassey, who's with Lesbians Who Tech, is going to lead that walking tour with us. That's tomorrow, 5 p.m. And then tomorrow night, we've got our Butch Nation show.
Yeah.
That's at the Malonga Arts Center. We've got some amazing performers. Doors are 6:30 p.m., 7 p.m. showtime. And then the after party is at Hella Gay, which is an amazing queer dance party that happens every month here at the Uptown. That starts at 9 p.m. And then Saturday, because Sunday we start a little later because Saturday night goes so long for so many of us. We start back at 10 a.m. and then we've got our spoken word, our stories, our bodies, our stories at 1:30 p.m. That's a lot. That's a lot, right? And all of that information's in your program. I mean, if there's any questions about it, you can ask any of us, and we will probably be like, what was that again? Let me try to remember. Let me find my program, and I can help direct you.
All right, now comes the fun part. So we are an all-volunteer-run group of folks who get together to put on this conference every 2 years. We often do things in our off years. We have done regional conferences and community conversations. We've done a lot of stuff. But one of the ways that we keep running is by donations. So we're going to do a little pitch right now because in 2013, it took us about a year and a half after the conference to finish raising the money to pay off the conference. We don't want to do that again. So we're going to ask you to give us 50 cents, $1, $5, whatever you got. Any amount really helps us keep this running. None of us get paid for it, but we do have to pay for the space. We have to pay for all the venues and our website and everything else that we got to put together. Printing, you name it, we got to pay for it. Anything you can give us really makes a big difference.
And we can happily take a card at the registration desk. We have a square reader if you would rather donate to that.
You can also go online and donate from our website. There's a link on our website to donate. And, of course, monthly donations are really, 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 really amazing. So, yeah, I had to take a pain pill, so I'm sorry if I'm sounding a little bit disjointed.
Do you want to have a seat? Is that helpful? Okay. Oh, be careful. There you go. You good?
That's good.
That's real.
All right. I didn't think I was going to make it this year because I couldn't afford to take the time off of work, and then I got laid off. So I just sat down with my partner on Tuesday night and said, what do you think if I hopped in the car and drove down to Oakland? And she said, that sounds like a really good idea. So I'm here. I'm in a little bit of pain, but I'm here. And I'm about to introduce somebody that I love very dearly, even though we don't get to spend as much time together as I would like to. First, I'm going to introduce Elle Frank, and excuse me if I slaughter this a little bit. Elle Frank is a Tongva Achachman, decolonist, an artist and activist, artist, writer, tribal scholar, and an educator in the Two-Spirit culture, as well as a water protector who has made 3 trips to stand at Standing Rock. She is also one of the 7 founding board members of the Advocates for Indigenous California Languages to support the preservation and revival of Native Californian languages. The other person I'd like to introduce is our keynote, Koja. A few months ago, I'm going to read too because I'm a little nervous. A few months ago, Joe reached out to ask me to be a part of BV again. And I needed it. I needed it because looking for a job is harder now with gray hair and 20 years of experience and a majority, like 99.9999% male field. I needed it because as a mixed blood with skin privilege, I'm watching my friends die, go to jail, or be harassed at a level I will never, ever experience. I needed it because my body is falling apart and I don't know what to do. And I'm going to cry. I needed it because I feel so separated from my community and young people who have no idea who we are or the work we have done. About 5 years ago, Butch Voices put together some community conversations, and at that gathering of amazing people, I met somebody I instantly clicked with. That doesn't happen often for me, and when it does, I try to pay attention, because it means something, at least to me. So when BV talked about who we should get as a keynote, I didn't hesitate. I didn't hesitate because I need to hear from another leader who works in the background. Someone folks know, but don't really know. Someone who holds so much integrity in their community, themselves, and everyone around them irradiates, and it's bound to affect you, whether you want it to or not. Koja is a firefighter, an organizer, a fundraiser, a warrior, a butch. Koja is someone I look up to when I need a reminder that there are good people in this world. People doing the work, people showing up, even when they can't or shouldn't. Koja motivates me to be a better person and a better community member. Koja.
Tupash hengamawish mila yachlo nga 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 sepulano ngaloma nga 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 Tupash hengamawish mila yachlo nga nga nga.
That was Elle Frank. Elle Frank is my two-spirit elder. She sings in Ajakmam. Thank you, Elle Frank. I also want to acknowledge that we're standing on Ohlone land today. I hate giving a disclaimer before a keynote, but I felt like it was important to let folks know that I am in cancer treatment, and subsequently I am more than a little foggy, which means that as a result I'm going to be using my notes today. I'm going to rely more on reading than I am on speaking. It is not ideal, but in order to be able to offer you a keynote today, that's what I could do, and I really, really want to be here to do a keynote. So that's what I brought with me today. Thank you. Hey everyone, my name is Koja. I am a Lakota Dyke, an EMS worker, and an educator. I'm a surfer, a staunch atheist, a feminist, and a blue-collar activist, and I've been a butch for 2 decades. When they asked me to give this keynote, I thought to myself, but why? Why me? I'm not famous, or hell, I'm not even gamous. I'm not an academic. I'm not a performer. I'm not a writer. I'm not known for public speaking. But then I thought about the things I brought to my people in those 2 decades. And one of the things that I value about our queer community is the ability to count our lived experiences as important, to put stock in the worth of our stories and think about the theme. Reconnect, recharge, resist. And I decided I had some things to say after all. Thanks for showing up to listen. On reconnection, I know that everything comes back to this. The personal is all of it political. Remembering where we come from always is a political act, where we stand and whose land we're on. Today, we stand on Ohlone land. I make it a point to know whose land I stand on at any given time. Opening with a prayer from my two-spirit elder is one way I feel gratefully tied to my history here today and as an Indigenous person. Looking out at so many of you that I share a deep tradition, a different kind of ancestry with, also ties me to my butch history, and recognizing this history, keeping it right here is so important. Without our history, we're unmoored and at greater risk. It's dangerous to not know where we fit into that history, how things have changed and how they haven't, how we have changed and why, how those who have made the way for us did, and how we are making the way for those who come next. Butch is a many-faceted word in queer community. But today, here, I'm talking about the lesbian version, the dyke version, the queer version that describes me, as well as it describes my trans sisters who are also butch, as well as it describes my trans masculine brothers who still hold this word sacred, as well as it describes my non-binary siblings who find strength in this word. The version that has its roots in the lesbian bar culture of the 1950s, but whose fruit is right here today. This version of this complicated and expansive word that so many of us feel tied to for so many reasons is historically a word rooted in female masculinity. Two complex and shifting concepts, to be sure. That's where I'm talking from. Queers have tried for so many decades, maybe some of us less than others, but tried as a community and as a demographic and as a voting bloc to find ways to be accepted into society. We've pushed for visibility and legal rights. We've carved out spaces and then showed our stories to whomever would listen. We've made beacons in the dark. And then when other queers showed up, we've made home. In some ways, we can find joys and wins in the progress we've made. In the fact that LGBTQ folks are shown on television and no one blinks. In the fact that we have marriage licenses, we can adopt children. Our pronouns are respected by journalists. We have immense corporations hoping for our pink dollars all the time and marketing to us accordingly. We have more options than we ever did. We have the option to just be gay, be lesbian, be trans. And our neighbors and our coworkers and our landlords are mostly okay with it. But what do we lose when we gloss over the lessons of our foremothers and decide that as long as we have a wedding registry and a mortgage and our kids get treated well, that we can settle contentedly into this system that is ongoingly violent and deadly? It's no mistake. That's so precious. Queer history is not lost. If not lost and forgotten, then certainly not treasured. We have everything to lose when we lose those connections, but the power structures that exist, the ones that still hate us even if we are currently tolerated a little, not accepted, don't be fooled. They benefit greatly when those stories go untold. Our stories are dangerous to the powers that be. When we honor our histories and amplify each other's stories, we hone the sharpest weapon we have, our survival. So many of my Butch elders and contemporaries have told their stories, even when most of the world is intent on silencing their voices. Reading their stories, listening to them speak, and knowing that I had connection to their legacy have been ways to see my own possibilities. One of the things that feels really important to me is the way that academic framing of our lived experience doesn't just fail to explain our lives, but frequently shuts out those living those experiences. Even those of us who have no academic experience, even having the right language puts us in a position of power. I feel like it's my job, like it's all of our jobs, to intentionally make space for all the queers, living queer lives who might not have access to the right terms or the right words, to make sure that there's no purity test to belonging to this community. That doesn't by any means excuse bigotry or internalized hatred, but it does mean that not having the right words isn't the answer to those deep problems either. It can feel so great to learn language that feels like home. It's like a balm when it's spoken by us and about us. But I want to challenge us not to make the words more important than the lives they describe. Not to cut out working class and poor individuals without access to the language of social justice, or those whose cultures of origin give them different language. Let's not let our efforts for justice stay centered around the comfort and fragility of white, middle-class, university-educated, millennial, English-speaking North Americans. Our movements and communities can't afford the ongoing ways that tear each other down for being problematic, especially because every time we lose one of these elders or contemporaries, it's our responsibility to carry their complicated, human, and yes, frequently problematic stories forward. We need to remember those who are our history while they are still with us, too. I watch us shutting down our elders and siblings and others for not knowing the current lingo, and this terrifies me. Words have value, and sometimes they divide. My history as Butch personally starts when I first heard that word, Butch. Finding language and community tied to a part of me that existed even before I had a name for it was necessary to my survival. It doesn't mean that I wasn't already the same things that I'd find in Butch identity. I was called a bull dyke and a he-she before I ever heard the word Butch. And honestly, before I had any context for what those things meant. Being a masculine girl child got people's attention, mostly negative, but I also found freedom in it, when no one was looking. The center of me that feels like home is still in that spot, in that place where slurs can name us before we can. I guess that's why I found such pride, love, and defiance in the words meant to cut me. When I was 15, a young woman, 5 years my senior, a woman I was certain I was head over heels in love with, grabbed my hand, peered closely at my very short nails cut down just so, looked me in the face and proclaimed, "You're a dyke." At the time, I remember entering into a blind panic, completely uncertain of what to do with myself in this moment. For one, she was touching my hand. That in itself was enough to bring me to my hypothetical knees. She'd also just named me in the light of day. She had called me something I knew but had yet to hear about myself, without fucking before it, without it spit as a slur into the dirt when I walked by. She said it matter-of-factly, much as this is a boot and this is a microphone, I was a dyke. There was no passion behind it. One way or another, I just was. And from what I'd gather, so was she. I was one of her people. Could anything be as simultaneously wonderful and terrifying? Even before being told I was a dyke and hearing such truth in that frank assessment, I snuck around in search of home. I was 13 and I was 14, and where was I sneaking to? But Take Back the Night rallies. Mind you, I'd have been beaten senseless had I been found out. After all, this is where the odd women could be found. Spinsters and witches and folk musicians and feminists, liberals. And yes, the occasional out lesbian. And I was already suspect, but it was worth a gamble just to be near these women. And wait, even before that, I'd heard butch, a laughable, pitiful descriptor to the ones spitting it at women with short hairs and Levi's, ponytails and Carhartts, an attitude I envied. And before that, bull dyke, with such vitriol from between clenched teeth, it certainly sounded like anything but a point of pride. It sent a wave of dread through me when my stepfather grunted it from his truck window, and I scrunched down in the seat. To this day, I wonder if such ramblings were meant especially for me, or if he was just that obsessed with us that these tangents were so frequent and passionate. My first associations with these words weren't positive, inspirational ones, but ones I feared the distinct inevitability of. I knew I was on a train I just couldn't get off of, and I was headed straight for Butch. I didn't latch on to Butch like coming home. Butch was like a case of poison oak that I just couldn't shake. It was obvious. It was obvious and spreading. I was luckier than many. As soon as I was old enough, I ran for the Bay. Here, I saw other butches not just getting by, but doing well. Being what I wanted to be. Finding the living parts of my history that let me slowly shake the feeling that what I was deficient. Every time I got the nod, or better yet, that clap on the back from an older butch, I felt a little more at home. A little more able to stand up straight and to turn the judgment I'd been given into a self-fulfilling prophecy. A good prophecy. One where I got to be the hero of my own story, instead of the regrettable disappointment to my relatives and others. It took a while past that to find the term two-spirit, a word I still half identify with, mainly because I'm not super traditional. I don't hold that spiritual space in my tribe, in my nation. But I do know that every part of my queer and butch identities were shaped by my being Lakota. So many overlaps for me between how to be a good Indian and how to be a good butch. And so even though I often feel like it doesn't fit quite right, I also find all kinds of things to feed my soul and two-spirit identity. It's part of my story, and I can't unweave the threads and be just one of these things. One of the reasons our stories and our histories are so hard to hold on to is because of the systems we humans have in place to hold the margins down. Those systems cause such deep traumas to us all that it's easy to see how our stories are wrenched from us or rewritten by those with more privilege, or just erased so that we can get by without thinking of these painful things. The hard truth, though, is that we are all wrapped together with that pain, and if we discard one, the other goes along with it. Learning to hold that pain while we see the beauty in our lives and our narratives is an indispensable skill. So, how do we recharge? When we are fighting for both our lives and the histories and the futures, we so often don't know how to fill up our buckets. Masculinity, even queer masculinity, even female masculinity, is vulnerable to the seductive danger of thinking one never needs help, of trying to fix all of the problems for oneself, one's loved ones, and one's community, and in doing so, neglecting to fill up the tank. When our bodies are the battleground for those trying to impose their standards on us, and even for ourselves, finding ways to sustain these bodies and even love these bodies is, to paraphrase Audre Lorde, a revolutionary act. But I'm going to express an unpopular opinion. I think self-care is overrated. Let me explain before you walk out. The way that we are sold self-care, the definition that we are given, describes any activity done to give ourselves comfort or to maintain our bodies and hearts. But there's a distinct lack of focus on what for me is more sustaining than a massage or a vacation. And I love a vacation. We don't talk as much about building self-worth. It's harder to sell, and honestly, it's harder to believe. It's harder to achieve. But I find such a source of satisfaction there. And I've been thinking about what makes the difference for me, and it's outcome. I can perform self-care, and at the end of it, I may be more relaxed or have a fresh haircut or well-oiled boots. But when I set out to feel more worthy, I attain that goal. I feel like a better butch. I feel like I'm more grounded in my need to be the best me that I can. When I was a baby butch, it seemed like it was the norm for older butches to take newer ones under their wings and guide us, like there was an unspoken rule about it. I probably never called it mentorship at the time, but that's certainly what it was. There was a reciprocity, and it was a way to learn the ropes. But more importantly, for building up a person who can survive on the margins. Those connections and exchanges and the tangible skills I learned from them made me feel worthwhile. I really do believe that while each of us has inherent worth, in order to feel worthy, we need to take action. We need to find our voices and use them, or learn to make something of value. And none of us start out knowing these things. Now, though, just a couple of decades later, we have a completely different way of learning and finding knowledge. And it doesn't require us to be humble in the same way. It's easy to Google things or find a tutorial on YouTube. There's no need to confront your feelings of inadequacy. When you get it wrong 50 times, you just hit refresh and try again. But the missing ingredient is the human connection. The building of patience and acceptance and humility and resilience is, in my humble, semi-Luddite opinion, not something one can find on the internet. We really have a hard time dealing with whole, flawed people, and everyone worth learning from is whole and flawed. We have a bad habit in our communities of discarding people when we find their flaws are too much to bear. Some people call this call-out culture or disposability politics. Kai Cheng Tom wrote a great article titled 9 Ways We Can Make Social Justice Movements Less Elitist and More Accessible. One of the parts that struck me hard was this, quote, "Obsession with correct language plays an enormous part in making social justice inaccessible to many people. Feminist terminology changes practically every day, it seems, and making a mistake with it can be cause for intense social backlash. And no, I'm not one of those folks who's always moaning about how the PC generation is ruining the world. I know what it feels like to be constantly misgendered, to hear racist slurs about my people casually tossed out as a joke. I believe that when people say things that reinforce impression and cause pain, they should be made aware of it. However, I'm also starting to realize that being considered a good feminist is an endeavor that can require an enormous amount of privilege. It takes time and a certain kind of education to read and keep up with social justice ideas. Not everyone's style of learning or thinking lends itself easily to learning new ways of thinking and talking." End quote. We may want for racism, misogyny, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, classism, and all the other ways we know to oppress one another to be hard lines in the sand. Ways that we can define ourselves away from those things by seeing where we get it right. But what we should all be working to recognize is that there's no way to separate ourselves or others from our participation in those systems. And just knowing the right words isn't real growth away from oppression. So when we listen to our elders, even if their words are outdated, when we listen to those who can't afford or don't have capacity for formal education, when we truly listen to those who express themselves in ways we feel we've grown beyond, we make that indispensability possible. The other piece that seems harder to come by than it used to, and yes, I know nostalgia is not super realistic, is the camaraderie that fills this conference, among other places. Finding that in our everyday lives is, for me, one of the most meaningful ways to recharge ourselves. By making real ways to learn from our butch peers and to share knowledge ourselves, and making space to just be without the intense pressure that we bear up under to conform. We are all often teetering on the edge of burnout. It's a concept we're all very familiar with. And so often, at least for me, the answer isn't just rest. It isn't only disconnection from stress and downtime, even though those are important parts of taking care of ourselves. Getting some rest and relaxation still often leaves me feeling like something's missing. For me, the opposite feeling of burnout is feeling lit up, feeling driven towards making something happen and then seeing it come to life, creating a community event and then feeling that remarkable loosening of the tightly wound shield that gets us through. Sometimes making those spaces happen seems like a big effort, like the tremendous effort of this amazing space. But sometimes the smallest scale can make a big impact. When I was a young butch, those ways to be together seemed easier, almost effortless. A handful of us who used to live in the city would get together and we'd shave each other's heads. Those were the days. Those were the days when a lot of barbers would still turn away women, and who had money for a haircut anyways. We got pretty good at a fade, but mostly we got that feeling of brotherhood. We got to talk about the fucked up feelings of being at the margins of the margins. We got to call each other out on shitty behavior. We got to figure out how to not let our feelings of alienation turn us on the ones we loved and respected. We got to teach each other real skills so that we could feel useful in a world that so often seemed to have no use for us. Someone would show up just having learned how to use a new tool or tie a cool knot, and we'd all learn it too. It made all the difference. So when I felt like I was missing that recently, my boy and I decided to do a reboot. And it's not as easy as it used to be. People are older but working just as hard or harder. People would rather interact from behind a keyboard because it's safer. Because people are busy for a million reasons. Instead of being deterred, we just put it out there. The answer clearly was that butches wanted that kind of space. One of the first times we decided to go old school and have a butch potluck. And we all try not to be stereotypes, yeah? But that night, the table with a dozen kinds of chips and beer and nothing else was a great visual. We may not have had a balanced meal, but we had a great laugh. But I want to know more. I want to know, what are the things keeping us from maintaining connection as butches? Why doesn't it rank in our day-to-day, or does it? I see other butches in Trader Joe's. I give the nod. But I also find myself lonely. The other butches in my life, they talk about being lonely too. In the Bay Area, we're fucking lonely. I think we're lonely because we're fucking tired. The butch road isn't just a rocky one. It's like the poorly maintained asphalts of Oakland. We're so busy swerving to avoid the fucking potholes that litter our days that when we get home and take off our armor, it feels like there's not much left of us. We're all trying to build those small places where we can find ways to get lit up, to keep pushing for change in space and real community. And each of you have exactly what it takes to build and nurture that space in your lives, but it's a thing that only works when we do it together. We must find ways to get lit up so we can draw our energy from there. There are energy reserves there. We just have to tap into them. Also, we must love other butches. Maybe it sounds simple, but I find myself asking these questions. Can we connect with our armor intact? Do we have to shed layers of binders and A-shirts and flannels and leathers to feel closeness? Do we buy into dude bro misogyny-based bullshit and shun the affection we need from one another to stand up sure of our butchness? How do we tell another butch we love them? And if it is indeed so goddamn simple, then why aren't we doing it? I don't know about you, but my butchness is at least partially about standing up and doing what's difficult. Now more than ever, we must resist. When we've really found ways to carry our history forward and fill our tanks with connection, the only way to honor those who have fought for our very existence is to resist. To resist the concept that gender and sexuality exist in a vacuum, and that racism, classism, ageism, and ableism don't exist when we are all fighting misogyny, homophobia, and trans antagonism. To resist the concept that we have to know all the latest academic concepts to speak up for what is right. To resist the concept that getting told when we fuck up is anything but a gift. To resist the buzzwords of diversity and inclusion, when what needs to happen is a true shift of power. To above all resist the immense and crushing pushback of this current regime and all of its supporters who want us and all of us who love us are as good as dead. Because don't let the feel-good ads or the really good TV programming lull you. So many people we share this country with would prefer we just laid down and died. Don't do them that courtesy. Our survival is in itself a radical act. The people on the front lines of this are all of those gender nonconforming. Butches, trans women, trans men, femme boys, gender fuckers, and so many more folks who don't fit society's idea of what a man or a woman ought to look like, feel, or behave like. We need to love every instance of this subversion. Every time someone resists gender norms and shows us who they really are, a bit more breathing room for each and every one of us is made. Our community has a bad habit of separating those of us who are not just on the same side of a fight for justice, but those who suffer the same marginalizations. I see this so strongly in the butch femme community. Those of us who are butch are often positioned as somehow holding societal privilege and power over those who are femme. I want to take this apart a bit. I am nearly always perceived as a woman, at least after initial sir, ma'am moments. And I do indeed identify as a butch woman. I'm also perceived as someone who is failing at the category of woman. My wearing of clothes from the men's department doesn't close the wage gap for me, give me space from mansplainers, or make me less at risk for gender-based violence. I don't see myself as an ally to femmes, or even though our community often frames us that way. I see myself as a comrade, fighting the same evils from a very, very similar societal place. Straight culture sees very little difference in us and treats us similarly. Butches get offered makeovers, while femmes get told they're pretty enough to get a man. Both of those insults are attempted erasures rooted in misogyny. I'm not, of course, saying that we don't all have mountains of internalized misogyny that we should be doing our best every goddamn day to confront and work on. I am, however, saying that all women and non-binary folks are marginalized by the system of misogyny, and the only way we benefit from deploying it is through self-hatred. I'm further saying that masculinity separated from male privilege and the category of man is inherently distinct. I think that our sabotage of traditional masculinity has the potential to be not just not toxic, which is a pretty low bar set by cis men, but transformative, affirming, and vital. The literal antidote to the toxins that we have to battle when confronted with masculinity in men and in society. I often feel like there's become less and less space in queer community for butch identity. But I'm emotionally, historically, and politically attached to my butchness. I still find both comfort and challenge here, and I'm guessing I'm not alone in that. Keeping that attachment means work, and work needs inspiration. I really couldn't think about speaking on resistance without quoting Audre Lorde. Here's a small taste of what inspires me from A Litany for Survival. Quote, "We were never meant to survive, and when the sun rises, we are afraid. It might not remain. When the sun sets, we are afraid. It might not rise in the morning. When our stomachs are full, we are afraid of indigestion. When our stomachs are empty, we are afraid. We may never eat again. When we are loved, we are afraid. Love will vanish. When we are alone, we are afraid. Love will never return. And when we speak, we are afraid. Our words will not be heard, nor welcomed. But when we are silent, we are still afraid. So it is better to speak remembering we were never meant to survive." End quote. I know it might seem a bit dark to be inspirational, but fear motivates me to be brave. Here's 3 things I'd like y'all to bravely take away and join me in working on after we leave this comfortable place we're sharing this weekend. Number 1, bring back butch mentorship. It's not the instant gratification that we've grown so comfortable with, but it's meaningful, and what it means is our survival. If you've been around a while, share what you've got and what you've learned about staying here and thriving without making yourself small or blending in so others could bear you. If you're new to butch as an identity, seek out your elders and offer something real and meaningful to make their lives easier. In exchange, you can trust that you'll learn something that'll carry you through. Number 2, actively cherish your butch elders. Fucking shower them with the respect and adoration they've earned, and for God's sake, learn. Learn every goddamn thing you can get your hands on from them. And offer them something for the privilege. Record what you learn. And elders, thank you. Thank you. We don't thank you enough for what we have. It is so hard won. 3, reject this butches are extinct party line. I will not be erased. We will not be erased. I'm so tired of hearing this dinosaur bullshit. We are not extinct, but we are still endangered. And if we want to survive, we have to look to our history and make it our responsibility to carry that history forward. The last thing I've got to say to y'all is this. 2 women, 2 dykes, took me in as an ornery baby butch of 14. They taught me how to change my oil, respect other women, lace my boots properly, use power tools, tend to fire, and to be resilient. They also taught me to spend my money on a good bed and good shoes, because when you're not in one, you're in the other. It's a motto I live by to this day. I owe my life to those 2 women, so I'm dedicating this keynote to them, to the 2 old butches that made me the butch I am today, the ones who put up with all my eye rolling and class cutting, and who held a frozen steak to my black eye when I woke them up more than once past their bedtime in tears. The butches who drove me to school to make sure that I went, and who had the sort of broad shoulders and scars that I could see myself growing into, because really that's what I needed most. I needed to see that there was someone for me to grow up into. And sure enough, here I am, smack dab in the middle of my 30s, the same age they were when they took me in and called me daughter. And now it's my turn. So I'll use this opportunity to thank them for giving me a future, and also to stand up here and to publicly promise to give the same to another struggling young butch. I swear it. Thank you. Thank you.
If you
Go.
could just say more on what you were saying earlier about masculinity not having to be so linked to toxicity.
Sure. I think that the way that butches, for me, I don't do masculinity like a man. The way that I do masculinity is like a butch. So I think it starts out right there, which is, for me, the people that I model myself after. I think that people grow up, with various, whether it's feminine models or masculine models, and I think that we assume a lot of times that butches are looking at men growing up as their models. Mine were women. My people that I wanted to grow up and be like were women, were masculine women. So I think it starts out right there with just masculinity not coming from men. I don't know that there is, if you're pulling masculinity from men, I don't know that there is a non-toxic way to be. I mean, I'm a little bit of a separatist, to be fair, but I truly don't. I'm sure that there are other people who believe that can happen, but most men are pretty toxic. It's just really, really hard to live a feminist life while pulling masculinity from male figures.
I grew up with my stepfather. He raised me since I was like a year and a half old, so he's my dad. And I got an understanding of what masculinity was based upon both my mother and my father, and understanding that my mom was actually way more sexist than my dad was, which is really interesting growing up. And I also grew up in Alaska. So the understanding of what male and female is up there is it gone? Okay. It's kind of a little different. It's not about what you wear. It's not about, everybody goes fishing. Lots of folks go hunting. Everybody wears their big rain boots and rain jackets, and it's not about that. For me, my understanding of what masculinity meant was to be vulnerable and to love unconditionally and give unconditionally. Because the women in Alaska are fucking badass, right? They gotta make sure their kids live, right? And that's not an easy task when, accidental deaths in Alaska are like one of the largest ways people die up there. Or, bear attacks or whatever. So, for me, part of masculinity is not about modeling it after anybody specific, but about taking the things that I love about myself, which is being open, and I'll give you my shirt off my back if you need it more than I do. Those are the things that I understand about my masculinity. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's my masculinity.
Made sense to me. I, on the other hand, have been totally oblivious from the very beginning as to whether or not I was masculine or this or that. I mean, people named me things, but even though they named me things, I never recognized what the hell they were talking about, nor did I care. Even though it seemed to cause everybody around me pain and caused me pain emotionally and I don't know, wherever else, it just didn't register that there was anything masculine about me or wrong with that or feminine about me, less feminine. I just didn't understand all the brouhaha. I was just busy being myself. So others said it was masculine, and, after a while we settled on androgynous, but I don't mind the masculine energy. There were no men that I watched for that. There was my grandfather, but I don't know, that was masked by beer. So, but it was the women, and so that's where it came from. Again, that surviving and making sure that your family survives. It looks like I moved to Prescott, Arizona, and I thought, yeah, this is a great town. Everyone's here butch, but they weren't. They just worked on ranches and rode horses. But yeah, so yeah, I think the less male energy, the less male energy that I get for masculinity in that category, the better, because it just always seems to go awry so quickly. There's always an ulterior motive somewhere, so it's best to just leave it lie.
You know how as soon as you say a thing, you're like, actually, that's not true. Well, some of what I said was certainly true, but maybe, and per usual, L. Frank says it better than I could. Male masculinity so often goes awry. It's not that it's always toxic, but the part that I misspoke about, I think, or wasn't clear on, is that women can perpetuate toxic masculinity too. So I don't mean to say that that's not happening all the time. I've done it. Most everyone I know who is butch has done it at one time or another. We're just learning and striving not to do it all the time. Yeah.
So you talked about a few things, like the type of masculinity that nurtured and all of other forms of femininity or masculinity that were sort of wiped out by the patriarchal white supremacist culture that may be kind of absent because we live in a colonial white supremacist capital.
God, how much time do you have? You can take that one.
I was just going to say everything. There's so, it rubbed out everything, and which many people, there are families and groups of people who in each culture who have been able to hang on to teeny pieces, and those are the ones where people are trying to get back to now, where gender and roles and what you wear didn't have to do as much with how you served your community.
My mom is Tlingit, and my dad is Aleut and Athabasca, and I was raised in my mom's, mostly with my mom, and it's a matrilineal line. It's passed down from mother, father actually has nothing to do with how things are done. And part of that is because you always know who the mother is. Always. Always, right? Like, the kid is born, you know who the mother is, but you don't always know who the father is. And in some ways, in my family, particularly, the women were so much more sexist than the men were. And I don't know why, but the role playing was my grandmother's brothers that were all placed in boarding schools, and we were all not allowed to learn the language or do the culture or any of those things. And I think my grandmother's trauma in that, like watching everything disappear, her mom dying, her dad giving her up, and then having very little interaction with her brothers other than basically being the babysitter and the house cleaner and the whatever at 11 years old, kind of pushed her to this place of you will follow these rules, you will be this way, this is what it means to be a woman, this is, all of those things. I'm not entirely sure where I was going with that. And my mom perpetuated that and actually did that worse on me. Obviously, I was required to clean the house. I was required to act a certain way. I had to go take Lamaze classes with my mom when she was pregnant with my little sister, and, you will one day have to learn how to do this. And I was like, I'm never having a kid. I thought that was pretty obvious. There's never going to be anything coming out of this body. But I think the point I'm getting to is trauma and cultural trauma, historical cultural trauma, plays out in really different ways based upon the region you're in, based upon the culture you come from, based upon how things are perpetuated. We lived on an island. The only way on or off is by boat or by plane. There were maybe 7,000 people, and it was one of the largest towns in Southeast Alaska. So that should give you some idea of I think it really depends. And in my family, whatever female was supposed to be everywhere else, it wasn't. And I didn't learn that until we left Alaska, and I was like, oh, this is really different.
I keep getting handed this, and it reminds me of those things all lined up on that good vibrations table.
That was phenomenal. There's so much I could ask. I'm a femme, I'm a queer femme, and I'm an artist and I'm a songwriter. And I often find myself called to and I write a lot of songs about the glory of the butch.
Thank you.
Don't worry, it's it seems like it's a boundless, infinite thing I have available. So I would love if you have anything more to say about the party line that butches are extinct. Yeah. And one thing I just want to throw out is my day job that pays the bills that I've done for 13 years, and I'm also a magician. So I meet a ton of children, 200 a week, and have short conversations with them. And, there's conversations about the butch identity and at, certain ages of folks here in the San Francisco area that don't like the word butch. And I just want to say, in my experience working with children, with my femmometer butch detection, I detect butches at 4 years old, 5 years old. And I swear to God, it feels them. So I don't think they're extinct either if I'm feeling 5-year-olds. But I just wanted to see what you think.
She's a magician who is finding 4-year-old butches. I think that's fantastic. That's pretty incredible. Things you've never heard before. I've never heard that. More I could say on. I don't know. I imagine most people in this room. I've been hearing that butches were going extinct, or that butches are dinosaurs, pretty consistently for a lot of years now. Honestly, quite a long time. And I actually seem to meet a lot of young butches who are really, really scared at hearing that. So I spend a lot of time sort of bolstering younger butches and being like, we're really not. Let me introduce you to many older butches, that I spend time around, and there's more of us growing all the time. So what more can I say about the dinosaur? Do you mean why is that why are people saying?
Another generation. Yes. And I was kicked out of lesbian groups because I wasn't butch enough, or I was too butch. But mostly I was butch. And we want to pass and be accepted, and this is what we're doing. And I kept thinking, wow, this is not my scene. And I would meet these femmes that I didn't know were femmes because they thought they had to wear flannel shirts too. And so girls would come up to me and they'd be all, and then they'd take off their flannel shirt and say, is it okay if I take this off? I'm like, yeah, it is. It really is. But that's how I first met femmes, is they were worried to be too girly, too femmy, and is it okay to wear lipstick on a date? And I'd be like, oh yeah. And, we each had to give each other permission, right? And I think a lot of butches, you meet that first time girl that says, you'd look really great with a tie on. That person that gave you permission to be you and to be as butch as you wanted to be. And she said, wow, you look great with a suit on. How about, whatever. So I think we're just keep hearing that myth, that story that it's going away, and maybe it is, and maybe it will go away, and
it's not.
Whatever. But I mean, younger butches who are afraid to say the word, and that's a dirty word and that's a bad word, like being queer and dyke and whatever isn't. So I'm like, take it if it's you, and don't. And the other panel that was here earlier, and somebody said, what can we do? A younger person said, what can we do to talk to our elders or whatever? And what do you want to hear from us and whatnot? And it's like, definitely, let me just do you. However your queerness manifests. If you guys say tomorrow we're just going to be looking like this, go for it. I know how we may look like this. But some down probably even look at that tie. Wait a minute, I got to show you.
Or what do you think is the best way that those who love butches, who don't identify as butches, can support not just the survival of butches, but the thrival of butches?
What an awesome question. I mean, I think that for me, that's going to be a different answer for every butch in this room, I'm sure. But for me, it's really, really simple. Just hearing a desire for somebody who's specifically butch feels really, really great, especially as we have really broadened the spectrum of how you can identify gender-wise, which I think is fucking fantastic, and I wouldn't have any other way. But I think with that, sometimes butch gets a little left behind. It's like a little outdated. So for those of us who do still really strongly identify with it, like I said, like emotionally, historically, politically, identify with the word butch, with the identity of butch, even just hearing, especially for me, just from a femme, how much they appreciate a butch is really precious. It's just, I know it's a really simple answer, but that is really how it feels to me. That's all it takes.
Yeah, I don't think it's so simple. I totally agree. Yeah, and I'm a complex person. I was trying to find audio people to help. I was doing a talk at Bioneers, and I couldn't find people to help me do my talk in a few minutes. This woman stops me, and she says, I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend you, but are you queer? And I said, well, yes, I am. And she said, well, are you butch? And I went, well, yes, I am. Because it was the first time anyone had ever, because I'm like I've said before in public, I'm afraid of spiders and mice and things like that. So I thought for the longest time it all had to do with that. Also, I thought that was part of the definition. Also, I myself am rather terrified of femmes. So just thought I'd tell you that, those in the know have seen me run. But, yeah.
We have right back there.
Well, I had a different question when there wasn't any other questions, but L. Frank, I think I've seen you as a person involved in the Two-Spirit Powwow, and I'm interested if you have anything to say about what's that like for you to be part of that and other powwows.
Well, being a California Indian means I have no idea how the heck powwows work. So I've been the co-MC for the past 6 years for the largest Two-Spirit powwow in the world. each year they keep promising us a better sound system, but it never happens, which makes me very happy because I say some really ridiculous things. And this way no one knows. It happens in February. For those of you who don't do powwow, maybe you don't like Indians. I don't know. My mother didn't. But you should come to this. It's in San Francisco, and everybody is welcome. And what happens there is, it's a powwow, but what happens is it's visibly the acceptance, not toleration, but the acceptance of all is visible. It's just that simple and that profound at the same time. And there's all kinds of families that are there, all kinds. It's open to all people. Doesn't matter how they identify. Yeah, there's that train derailing thing about I'm older and now there are so many names for me to remember about who to call what when. But everybody's welcome. All the they, thems, theirs, and yours and mine. But it's... I've seen it. I've seen the powwow itself really, really change people who were just in the Bay Area, continuing to be closeted inside themselves, and I've seen the powwow open them up. So it's also a place to come and get a little diabetes if you like fry bread.
Answer maybe and a comment. My answer to the question about what we can do to support butches, whoever we are, is to confront anybody who says that's not butch, or you're not butch enough. Yeah. And not that I've had people say that to me, but I hear that. Like, I hear that from trans men who said, "Oh, I wasn't butch enough, so I had to transition," or any activity that we don't identify with cis men isn't butch. So that's what you can do for me is confront anybody who tries to tell another butch what butch is. Because we're varied and afraid of spiders and good at cooking and parenting and people. I am the domestic servant in my household. Yeah, you bet. There's no question about that. It's as varied as we are. So that's my answer to that question. And my comment is, I have such gratitude for what we've taught each other as butches. And I love you. All of you.
And how we love each other is just like that. It's as simple as saying I love you. And I never, ever have a problem telling my friends I love them. Because I think,
really important for me
as a butch, it's really important for me to let
how much they mean to me.
My butch friends know how much they mean to me. Because we don't always do that. We don't. And it's the most beautiful thing in the world when I can walk up to one of my friends and say, I love you. And at the end of every conversation, I love you. You know? It's like, it's just that simple.
I think that's it. No, one more. I think that's it. No, one more. Everybody's pointing, but all at the same. Okay.
Just about, kind of don't know your wisdom or advice about sustaining the butch and butch organizer. You said you were standing around 3 times, and you know how you just take space and organizing and I don't know, kind of sustaining the butch, showing up.
You want to talk about standing around?
Can I repeat the question? I'll forget the answer. It's about being butch and taking space, making space in the field of organizing. Yes, and mentioning going to Standing Rock. Yeah. Okay. Whew. All right. Yeah. Well, I don't know how collectively other butches do this. But since my own native, my Indians, my peeps, my tribe were extinct, everything is activism and organization. It's just to exist as those peoples. So what it is I was called to go to Standing Rock, and I thought, how the hell can I do this? I'm an irresponsible artist, and I'm a responsible activist. I'm just an irresponsible artist. And what I did was I said, okay, we're going. And I just said that, and I said that to the people who also wanted to go. And from there, how do you go? Well, if you're going to go to your friend's house and it's potluck, well, you're going to bring a bag of chips, right, and a beer. So it's just as simple as that. As what do we need to take in the car? How are we going to get the car? Well, I have $50. I have $100. Maybe we need to ask community. All it is never being deterred by a wall. It's like those mazes. Life is just like those rats in maze. Sorry for that analogy, but it's just like that. And you keep bumping into a wall, you just keep moving, because there's no such thing as there's no such thing as stopping. And so all the answers are there because they're all within especially these days, resources and finding places and people to be able to help you organize. But this is speaking after 40 years of organizing. In the beginning, I tagged along behind people who actually got things done. Not the people who talked about getting things done. Not the people who are on the TV or, on the radio, but the people who are actually doing something. If you want to actually do something, those are the people that you carry their stuff from the car to here, and you sit in on the meetings about how to organize. So it's pretty involved, but it's really just paying attention and not being stopped by anyone or anything, no matter what, because who the hell are they?
Any other questions? Going once? Going twice? Oh!
Got one.
I'm going to wire.
I really like what you talked about building community, and Butch mentorship really resonated with me. I think especially because you talked about seeing other Butches, like, oh, they're all doing things and you give them the nod, but that's it and it ends there. I'd like to know more about why you think that Butch mentorship has ended, and then as someone who may be seeking a Butch mentor, how, I struggle trying to figure out what I'm thinking now, and I'll continue to think on this, like what someone who is younger, who is seeing that, how they might seek that out, and what might suggest as things they might be able to offer that aren't.
Sure. So the question was on Butch mentorship. What kind of things somebody who wants a mentor can offer, right? And also how to go about finding a Butch mentor. And also the first thing you asked was about why do I think that Butch mentorship is over? I didn't mean to imply that it's over completely when I said bring it back. I don't think it's over. I think that it's not the norm as it once was. When I was a baby Butch, it was what you did. It was how you learned shit. It was how you learned how to do anything. I really wouldn't know how to do half of the things I know how to do now if it wasn't for my Butch mentors. And I still have Butch mentors. I haven't grown out of it. Your mentors just get older. No offense. I think that you find them by asking for them, by seeing somebody who knows how to do something that you want to learn and saying, hey, you know what? I would love to learn how to do that. And then thinking about what you can offer back. And I think that the problem with Butch mentorship and the reason people get tired about it is that there's not enough reciprocity. We just expect the mentorship to be enough, like that somebody is just going to be that charmed by us that we want to learn from them, that's just going to be enough. And really, I think finding tangible, concrete things that you can do for somebody is making that a reciprocal back and forth is what will keep that going, is what feeds that connection. So, and I think that that's very individual as far as what that person might need in their life. I think there isn't a one size fits all. You look for where are the holes in this person's life. This person is having more trouble driving as they're getting older. Maybe I can offer them some rides. Maybe I can play their, what's the word when you drive somebody around? Chauffeur. I was going to say chaperone. Much, I know. Their chauffeur. Maybe you can play their chauffeur around for a few events that are coming up. Any ways that you can be of service. Maybe you're coming and cleaning their house. Maybe you're changing their oil. Maybe once they teach you how to change oil, guess what? Now you change their oil. Maybe it's things like that. Maybe it's things that you learn from them and then you can put into practice down the road. But I think if you were to ask me, like, what is the thing missing from mentorship and why is it kind of going away? I think it's because of that lack of following up with what you can actually do for the person who's teaching you. It's not enough to just be their grateful student.
And, if you see a butch, or you see two butches, and one of them makes porcelain teacups in their spare time, and you're really not interested in porcelain teacups, don't go ask that person to help, because everyone's going to be really unhappy. So you find somebody who you go where your interests are. It's always really, not to be selfish, but you're the center of the universe, so you go from your center out, and then that's the people that you help. And I didn't finish the Butch story with that woman who stopped me. Apropos to nothing, I'll throw it right back here. She asked to take my photograph, and she took my photograph, and she said, "Here's my blog," and it was Butch's, and I was Butch 125 on her Butch blog.
When I came out, the only way to find queer community was to find that cafe or that bar or that whatever to go find people. I do feel like the internet has changed a lot of that, and I don't feel like there's a lot of reciprocity anymore. And in order for me to find an event, I had to go find that cafe that had that flyer of that event that I wanted to go to. I had to know somebody who knew something about where to go and who to talk to. And I know in Seattle we don't have an LGBTQ center up there. And you go to a lot of places and there's not bars or cafes or something to go. So how do we find each other? Places like this, when we see each other on the street, maybe it's not just a nod now. Like, maybe we actually do reach out and say, "Hey, what's up?" Even that little, like, "Hey, what's up?" is better than just the nod. And, I've been in spaces where I'm trying to catch somebody's eye to just say, "Hey, what's up?" And they won't look at me. They would look everywhere but me. And that happens. It's like, okay, all right, you don't want to be seen, you don't want to see me, that's fine, that's cool. But, like, reaching across the divide, I think a lot. If you hear somebody talk and you like what they say, go talk to them. Like, what's the worst that can happen? Sorry, I'm busy, gotta go. 9 times out of 10, what another person does is nothing personal against somebody else. It's their own thing. They're doing their own thing, and they're focused on themselves because that's what we do as humans. So I try not to. I've been rejected a gazillion times by femmes, by other butches, by whoever, but I just keep doing it because I'm like, well, it's probably not about me. I try not to take it personally. Anything else? Any other questions?
The one thing going on now that brings us together is protesting. And I'm involved in San Francisco, and it's a bunch of old gray-haired, mostly white guys that go to San Francisco. I So we started a group called Action Action, and we had to make protest signs, and we're going to have to make more. And most of them get together in someone's garage, and it's all different. So it's like they'll find it where it is, and the act doing something together, and action with purpose, is really brings it together. I mean, when I was in 1976, it was living talking about it. But now it's about the world, get rid of this regime right now, and so we have different priorities. So that's where we find our camaraderie, relationship, sister, brother, whatever, together.
So I was going to respond to the question of the conversation about the nod and all that. I think that's something a lot of us relate to. So I'm like a popular person in my community, but I'm super socially awkward when I'm alone. And so at the meet and greet last night, I noticed that it was a much higher amount of older fans that came up to me to introduce themselves to me, or like, hey, welcome, how's it going? Are you here for the conference? Then there were bushes during that meeting. I don't mind older fans coming up to me. That's well and very invited, but I was just, especially of people of my age group, or that seem like they might be of my age group, and I know we all are every age physically, that there wasn't really that same, it's the joke of the butches league, where there's like when you're out in the world or experiencing these, there is that excitement to get the nod, because it's like, oh cool, another queer person, another bush person in this like shitty world. But like when we're in our own communities, like a gay bar or like a queer event, and the butches aren't nodding anymore. They're more of like either like chef coffee or like thing. And so that's the transition that's kind of hard for me. Is like I get so excited when I see folks like me or that are part of my community out in the world. But what happens when we're actually in each other's room when we stop? And so that's what I think it's worth thinking about.
Some of that, I think, is that same thing as the potato chip bag. I was on a line a long time ago. I thought, I'll talk to other butches. And you'd get online, they'd go, hey. You'd go, hey. They'd go, hey. So some of it might be that, just some of that I'm saying.
Thank you guys so much.